Outside of Lyonesse, Alione, a young squire, walks through a desecrated residential area with an older knight. They stop at the site of a bloody battle, where dozens of holy knights lay dead. The knight explains that all of them were killed in the blink of an eye by only 7 people. 10 years later, near Cain's village, a figure clad in full suit of armor shambles across the fields. Nearby, at the Boar Hat Bar, many patrons visit for drinks and food, though the bar's owner says that they have a reputation for good booze and terrible food. A man bursts into the bar and states that he saw the infamous Rust Knight. One bar patron says that the Rust Knight is just a made-up story to scare kids into behaving. He points out the wanted posters and explains that the 7 deadly sins had massacred holy knights, including the Grand Master, 10 years ago. Loud creaking noises stop conversations in the bar, and Hawk, a talking pig, says he can smell rust. The door swings open, and a large armored figure shambles in, causing the patrons to evacuate. The figure falls backward, revealing an unconscious young woman. The owner brings her back to his room and checks to make sure that she's a woman, much to the frustration of Hawk. When she wakes up, she asks what happened and where she is. He replies that she suddenly passed out in his bar. He makes food for her, and she agrees that the food is awful, but still says it's delicious as she begins to cry. She explains that she's looking for the sins. Outside, Alione and the Knights of Beard of the Mountain Cat demand entry so that they can arrest the Rust Knight. Alione recounts his experiences at the uprising 10 years ago, telling them not to underestimate the sins. His team doesn't believe him. The Knights shout at the bar again for the Rust Knight to come out, and Hawk comes over dressed up with pieces of armor. Alione shouts at the owner, frustrated with the turn of events while the woman tries to sneak out of the bar. One of the Knights notices her, and Alione calls for them to inform Twigo. The Knights chase her through the forest, and Alione muses that he can finally be an apprentice holy knight if he catches her. However, Hawk bolts in and knocks out all of them. The owner asks why she's looking for the sins, and she replies that she's trying to stop the holy knights. Hawk questions this, saying that the holy knights are heroes who protect Lyonesse. However, the woman reveals that King Bartra is not actually sick and that the holy knights have commenced a coup d'état to start a war. Though she knows they're considered criminals, the sins are her only hope in stopping the holy knights. Suddenly, Twigo cuts the ground below them, causing them to fall down the cliff. He tells the rest of the knights to write up a report about the casualties, but the owner lands safely in front of them with Hawk, Alione, and the woman in tow. Twigo recognizes the woman's earring as a mark of the royal family, concluding that she is Elizabeth, the 3rd princess of Lyonesse. Elizabeth, Hawk, and the owner flee into the forest. Hoping to accidentally kill her, Twigo cuts through the entire forest, causing hundreds of trees to fall. The owner shields her from the impact with his body. However, Elizabeth then walks toward Twigo to give herself up in the hopes that a kind stranger would not be killed because of her. After protecting her again, he introduces himself as Meliodas. Alione wakes up looking for Meliodas, but a knight reassures him that Twigo can handle himself. Yet Alione says they should be worried as he had recognized Meliodas' dragon tattoo. Twigo attacks Meliodas from behind, but instead, Twigo is the one who gets hurt. As Meliodas stands, Twigo recognizes him and asks how he looks exactly the same. Twigo attacks again but does no damage. Meliodas counterattacks with his broken blade and causes the area to explode in a cloud of smoke and Twigo to shoot off into the distance. He smirks, reintroducing himself as Meliodas, the dragon sin of wrath who led the 7 deadly sins. After resheathing his sword, Meliodas explains to Elizabeth that he runs the bar to gather intel. He asks if she'll come with them, which she immediately agrees to. Twigo, surrounded by knights in a crater, tells them to call for reinforcements, but Hawk's mom emerges to pick up Meliodas and Elizabeth. At Fort Solgales, a holy knight expresses his hopes that Twigo's report on seeing one of the 7 deadly sins is real this time. In a flashback about the coup, holy knights break into the Lyonesse throne room for the king, while Elizabeth escapes. In the present, Meliodas makes Elizabeth the Boar Hat's waitress so she can gather information on the holy knights and the other 7 deadly sins. Elizabeth asks what sort of crime the 7 deadly sins committed to be hated by the public, but Meliodas doesn't give her a straight answer. They set up the tavern outside of Burnia village. Meliodas mentions that they have some of the finest ale, but the trio find out that a holy knight has cursed the village to stop their water supply. Gil Thunder had stuck a sword in the ground, which can only be removed by another holy knight. A child named Me comes up and says that his friends, the 7 deadly sins, could easily fix it. However, The villagers grow angry at his cocky attitude, which had caused the mess. Once they start throwing rocks, Meliodas brings Mead back to the boar hat. Meliodas asks Mead what he meant when he said he knew the sins, but Mead doesn't answer. Elizabeth and Hawk return to the boar hat, and Elizabeth tells a story about how she, like Mead, was a prankster to get her father's attention. Mead then confesses that he acts that way because he's an orphan and an outsider. However, Mead decided to put a bug in Gilthunder's drink because Gilthunder was treating the villagers badly, not because he wanted their attention. He says he lied about being friends with the Sins and just assumed they were the good guys since they were being hunted down by the Holy Knights. Mead runs off after hearing commotion from the village. The villagers are arguing with two guards who are taking advantage of the knight's curse. Mead tries to pull the sword out of the ground, while the guards and villagers shout at him. The village elder reminds the villagers that the Holy Knights were the one who insulted their village, not Mead. They finally realize their mistake and try to help Mead with the sword, but are unsuccessful. Meliodas saunters into the village and nonchalantly pulls the sword out, causing the water to flow again. He throws the sword at the two guards, who run away. The villagers apologize to Mead, and everyone celebrates at the boar hat. While struggling with her waitress duties, Elizabeth learns about the Forest of White Dreams, a place so dangerous that not even holy knights want to enter. Back at Fort Solgales, soldiers report to Gilthunder that Meliodas had pulled the sword out of the ground. After hearing the news, Gilthunder throws a spear across 11.7 kilometers, 7.3 miles, away toward Burnia village. Sensing the attack, Meliodas steps outside where Elizabeth is contemplating on the grass. Elizabeth talks through her troubles while Meliodas looks for the spear. Meliodas reminds her that her drive to find the Sins gives her people a chance. Meliodas catches the spear and is pulled down the cliffside and into various buildings of the village. He redirects the spear right back to the fort, aiming perfectly for Gilthunder's head. Gilthunder, who moves out of the way, figures out that Meliodas is still alive because of that attack. Meliodas knows that Gilthunder will be chasing them, so he says they must leave Burnia as soon as possible. Elizabeth suggests hiding in the Forest of White Dreams, and Meliodas says there must be another sin to find there. In the forest, a young woman with a serpent tattoo sleeps soundly. The main characters soon arrived at the Forest of White Dreams that is said to even be avoided by the Holy Knights because of how dangerous it can potentially be. After walking for over 3 hours and having lost their sense of direction, they suddenly discover multiple copies of Hawk. All of the copies attempt to proclaim that they are the real one, until Meliodas easily defeats them. The mysterious monsters then decided to transform into copies of Elizabeth. In order to discover who is the real Elizabeth, Meliodas decides to instruct them to do some actions, e.g. left hand on cheek, and when he tells all of them to jump, all the fake copies of Elizabeth jumps up and the real one stays on the ground. With one attack, Meliodas defeats all the monsters that are revealed to be the prankster imps who love to play hide and seek. The monsters retreat and the characters decide to follow them, and finally discovering Diane of the 7 deadly sins. The prankster imps appears to be Diane's underlings and believe that Meliodas was a holy knight. Worried that Meliodas is a holy knight, the prankster imps decided to wake up Diane, who was sleeping in the Forest of White Dreams. As soon as she woke up, Diane grabbed hold of Meliodas with her left hand, only to realize that Meliodas was her captain. Hawk and Elizabeth then realized that she was the sin of Indy, Diane. As soon as Diane discovered that Meliodas was traveling with Elizabeth, she got jealous and threw him away, calling him a cheater. The impact of her thrust destroyed areas of the surrounding forest. She continues crying and rampaging until finally, she calmed down and listened to the reason why they were traveling. When Meliodas revealed that he had no memory of what had happened 10 years ago, Diane explained what had happened. She told him that 10 years ago, during the National Foundation Festival, the 7 deadly sins were summoned by the great holy knight, Zarathustra. However, when they arrived at the meeting point, they only could discover his dead body, which was completely skewered with spears. The 7 deadly sins were then surrounded by all the knights of the kingdom, and were then branded as traitors of Lyonesse. After the recollection, Diane decided to help search for the 7 deadly sins. Immediately afterwards, the group encounters Gilthunder of the Holy Knights, who paralyzed them with his electrical abilities. Gilthunder suddenly appeared and trapped Meliodas, Diane, Hawk, and Elizabeth with rings of electricity. After realizing that Gilthunder was a Holy Knight, she revealed he was like her elder brother. She became shocked to learn that he was the person who attempted to wipe out Burnia, and was then released from the electrical rings. When she demanded him to release the spell, Gilthunder ignorantly kicked Hawk away and began to question Meliodas about whether he knows why the Holy Knights are after the heads of the 7 deadly sins. He continues to answer his own question and states that he wishes to take revenge for his father Zaratras as well as surpassing him. Afterwards, Meliodas recognizes Gilthunder as Little Gil, the son of the great Holy Knight. In order to begin their battle, Meliodas breaks the electrical spell and draws his sword. He was able to deflect Gilthunder's initial lightning slash, but was cut by his second from behind and subsequently fell onto the ground. Gilthunder thought that he was dying and decided to ask for his last words. Meliodas took the opportunity to ask for the locations of the 7 deadly sins, and discovered the location of the fox's sin of greed, Ban, and the grizzly's sin of sloth, King, from Gilthunder. Immediately after receiving the information, Meliodas jumped back up and returned to enter the battle again. He easily and swiftly dodged Gilthunder's attacks, attempting to quickly escape the battle and search for the 7 deadly sins. When Gilthunder was about to deliver his finishing blow, Diane grabbed him with her hands and threw him away after her armband was burnt by Gilthunder's discharge of lightning. The Holy Knight flew into a chapel and injured priests and civilians who were praying to bring divine retribution to the Holy Knights. He remained unscathed and ignored the people who was wounded around him. After Gilthunder was thrown away, Meliodas and his group began traveling on Hawk's mother and discussing where they should head. In the end, they decided to go to the base dungeon because it was closer, even though the Weird Fangs were stationed there. Elizabeth grew concerned over Meliodas' wound from Gilthunder. However, he tried to reassure her that he was fine. He entered the boar hat and was then discovered by Elizabeth to have fainted on the floor. At the base dungeon, the Weird Fangs are revealed to be located there in order to keep Ban confined. Ban began humming a tune, even with metal rods pierced into his body. Galgius appears and attempts to take Elizabeth and Meliodas' sword back to Lyonesse. Whilst attempting to take the sword, Meliodas awakens, with no effect of the poison showing, proceeding to blast an aura that causes Galgius to make a hasty retreat. Meliodas and Elizabeth set off to base dungeon afterwards. However, they are stopped by a confused Diane, who after hearing the sound of a bell, attacks the group. They try to run away from the berserk Diane, involving a pair of shepherds along the way. However, Meliodas soon succumbs to the same bell, and begins to fight Diane. Meanwhile in base dungeon, Ban is shown wandering around after having dealt with Jericho. It is not long before he is found by Jude of the Weird Fangs, who promptly stabs Ban in the chest. Meliodas and Diane are still fighting each other. Elizabeth shouts for them to snap out of it, and for a few moments they do, until the sound of the bell once again spurs them to fight each other again. The Holy Knight Frisia comes in, threatening the life of the shepherds. However, Elizabeth steps in to protect one of them, heavily injuring herself in the process. It is then revealed that one of the shepherds is actually Ruin, and that he has been fooling them all this time. As Elizabeth gets beaten up by Ruin, she manages to knock off the bell that is causing the hallucinations. Ruin goes to punish Elizabeth further for doing so, but Meliodas quickly comes to her aid, thus beginning Meliodas' battle with Ruin, whilst Diane faces off against Frisia. Both defeat their respective opponents, and the team continues their trek to base dungeon. Elsewhere, despite having been pierced in the chest, Ban is able to overpower Jude, and takes him out. Meliodas and company finally enter base dungeon, although it is all a trap as Galgius locks them in with the Eternal Seal spell. However, the reunion between Ban and Meliodas caused so much destruction that it completely destroyed the structure and nullified the spell. Later that evening, the gang enjoys a meal courtesy of Dana, but an omen in the sky foretells of great disaster to befall Britannia soon. Ban wakes up from a dream as Hawk calls everyone down. Elizabeth wakes up next to a rope-bound Meliodas. While they eat breakfast, Elizabeth asks Hawk to tie Meliodas looser next time, but Hawk refuses, saying that he'll have more hands than a teenage octopus. Meliodas chooses the gang's next destination to be the capital of the dead, where King is rumored to have gone. As they talk more and more about what the capital of the dead might hold, Ban falls asleep and has flashbacks of when he tried to obtain immortality from the Fountain of Youth. His attempts are all stopped by a mysterious girl who blows him away from the fountain each time. After multiple attempts, both Ban and the girl are fed up and eventually start talking to one another. It is then discovered that the forest will die if the water is taken, after which Ban stops all of his attempts. They also introduce themselves, with the girl's name revealed to be Elaine. The gang stops at a village said to be the closest to the capital of the dead, and split up to gather more information on both King and the capital of the dead. Ban discovers a pair of siblings, Ellen and Luigi, and offers them some food in return for information on the capital. Their meeting is interrupted by the appearance of King, who stabs Ban in the chest. A fight ensues, however it is broken up when King sees Diane, which causes him to run away. After being fed, Ellen opens up and says that a priceless memory shared with the deceased will open the path to the capital. Having obtained a hint to getting into the capital of the dead, the others try to find memories with which to unlock the way, albeit with no success. It is only as Ban remembers back to a time with Elaine that the gang is granted access to the capital of the dead. King secretly follows along behind them as the siblings watch in awe as they all disappear. Upon entry, Ban spots what appears to be Elaine in the distance, who tries to run away, however he gives pursuit, with King following in tow. Back at the village, a mysterious female holy knight appears behind the siblings. The mysterious holy knight is revealed to be Goyla, who threatens the kids and succeeds in gaining entry to the capital of the dead. Meanwhile, inside the capital of the dead, King petrifies Ban in an act of revenge for his sister, Elaine. However, the spirit of Elaine chooses to reverse the petrification, much to the surprise of King. Here, Ban and Elaine's pasts are explored. Whilst looking for Ban and King, the two now split from the rest of the group to chase after Elaine, Meliodas, and the others have a run-in with Goyla. The battle begins between Meliodas and Diane fighting against Goyla. However, tremors from the battle with Goyla reach where Ban and King are, forcing Ban to join the fight against Goyla. Left alone with his sister now, King listens to her plea to help Ban just as Hawk arrives with Elizabeth, who tries to pull the spear out from the ground to fight Goyla. Seeing her determination, King decides to go help the Sins, who are still struggling, even with the arrival of Ban, in defeating Goyla. With the appearance of King, the battle comes to a close as he overpowers Goyla with Chastiful. Their time in the capital of the dead seemingly up, Ban and Elaine have one more close moment, before being bid farewell by Ellen and Luigi, who are revealed to have been ghosts this entire time. As the group rests, Elizabeth praises King's power as he was able to defeat Goyla single-handedly, whereas Meliodas, Ban, and Diane struggled, despite it being a 3 versus 1 battle. King responds that if either of them had their sacred treasures, they would have been able to defeat Goyla in a breeze, which starts their search for the other's sacred treasures. Under the guise of summons from Hendrickson, Jericho and Twigo are taken underground and offered power through drinking demon's blood. However, if they're not compatible with the demon blood, they will die. The two accept this despite its risks and drink the demon's blood. Jericho is found compatible, and Twigo not. Meanwhile, Meliodas and the others arrive at Vasel for its annual fighting festival, whose grand prize this year is Gideon, Diane's sacred treasure. As giants are banned from the festival due to an incident years ago, Diane stays back with Elizabeth for some girl time, while Meliodas, Ban, and King enter the competition to win back Diane's sacred treasure. Elizabeth and Diane are out in the forest outside of Vasel searching for anything that might be edible. Elizabeth stumbles upon a pile of mushrooms before a shadow looms over her. Diane hears Elizabeth's cry and comes running over to find a frightened Elizabeth and a large, purple mushroom creature. She taps it on the head and it squirts out pink smoke that engulfs them. Back in Vasel, the elimination round begins with the rules being that contestants have to push their opponents out of the ring. The 8 contestants left standing will move on to the finals. The 8 contestants left standing are Holy Knight Gryamor, a mysterious girl named Matrona, Holy Knight Hauser, Taizu, Old Fart, Cain Barzid, Miliatafu, and Baan. The first matchup is Grymor vs Matrona, the second matchup is Hauser vs Taizu, the third matchup is Cain vs Old Fart, and the fourth matchup is Miliatafu vs Baan. Grymor and Matrona step into the ring, but Matrona is asked to remove her cloak to make sure she is not hiding any weapons. Underneath, Matrona is wearing Elizabeth's clothing, raising Meliodas' suspicions. Grymor and Matrona fight, and Matrona ends up being the victor by sending Grymor flying. Matrona ends up being revealed to be actually Diane, and King asks how she ended up that size. She tells him about the mushroom they encountered. King says that they must have met a Chikimatango and it shrunk them because it felt threatened. Meanwhile, Hauser and Taizu go at it, but Hauser uses his special ability and sends the latter up flying out of the ring. Veronica goes to find Grymor, followed by Hauser. He asks the two what they are doing out here and learns that they are looking for Elizabeth. King goes up against Cain Barzid and loses after having been pushed out of the ring. The final round is Meliodas against Ban. Hauser learns from Grymor and Veronica that King, Ban, and Meliodas are part of the 7 deadly sins. Meliodas and Ban fight each other. They go head to head and it looks like Meliodas is going to win, but Ban takes all his powers. Ban goes to deliver the finishing blow, but Meliodas grabs and crushes his wrist and blasts him out of the ring. King and Diane saw how it happened but are concerned with the look of Meliodas' face when he did it. Next up is Diane against Hauser in the first match of the semifinals. Diane runs into the ring but first hands over tiny Elizabeth to Meliodas. Veronica and Grymor continue their search for Elizabeth. Diane tries to avoid Hauser's tornado attack because she does not want to destroy Elizabeth's clothes. Hauser sends a full-on cyclone at Diane, but Diane beats him by turning into heavy metal. Meliodas goes up against Cain in the next semifinal. Cain reveals that he knew Meliodas in the past and is from Danafor, a kingdom that Meliodas allegedly destroyed. It is where Elizabeth was born. Cain asks him what possessed him to kill Liz, the woman he loved. Meliodas says that he tried to protect them and that this time he is not going to let that happen again. Cain asks him if he can trust Meliodas, and Meliodas says that he did not betray the kingdom. Cain forfeits the round, leaving Meliodas as the winner of the round. The final round is Meliodas against Diane. Meliodas asks if they should half-ass it, since if either one wins they will still get the treasure. But then some women from the sidelines catcall Meliodas, upsetting Diane, who calls Meliodas a womanizer. Meanwhile, Guilla, Jericho and Marmus are on their way to Vasil, where Jericho wants to use her new power. Diane relentlessly punches Meliodas, who tries to convince her that he does not know who those women are. They continue to fight but suddenly freeze. Meliodas tells the crowd that Vasil is theirs and that they have 1 minute to clear out. The crowd does not believe them at first, but then disperses once Guilla, Jericho, and Marmus arrive. Jericho attacks Ban, severely injuring him. Ban is surprised that his cuts are not healing. Meliodas goes up against Guilla but is taken out by her chain reaction technique. King finds Ban and Meliodas unconscious and is attacked by Guilla. He survives the attack and defeats both women. King tells Hawk to take care of Ban and Meliodas while he interrogates Guilla and Jericho. Diane is upset when she learns that Gideon is missing. Hauser comes to fight her for past crimes, but first, she looks after an old man. Diane is then attacked by Marmus and sent falling into a ravine. Hawk gets Elizabeth, Ban, and Meliodas to safety. While praying over the 2 unconscious deadly sins, Elizabeth returns to normal size just as Veronica and Grymor walk by. Veronica gives Elizabeth her jacket to wear and proceeds to scold her for running away with the deadly sins. Veronica tries to take Elizabeth away, but Meliodas stops them. Veronica pulls out Goddess Amber and activates it, causing Meliodas to be sucked inside. Elizabeth snatches the jewel and Meliodas' sword and tells Veronica to bring him back, but she does not know how to do that. Grymor captures Elizabeth in a shell, but Ban tells him he will kill Veronica if he does not let Elizabeth go. King continues to fight Guilla and Jericho, but Love Helm saves them, revealing himself to be Hellbram. Hellbram and King fight against each other, although it looks like Hellbram has the upper hand. Ban gets taken out by Jericho and Veronica is released from his clutches. Guila and Jericho tell Grimoire to release Elizabeth into their care. Veronica says no, and while they are distracted, Elizabeth gets up and runs away. Veronica runs after her and shields her from an explosion made by Guila. This causes some fatal injuries, and she dies in Elizabeth's arms. Guila and Jericho are released from Grimoire's shield and come to retrieve Elizabeth once more. Elizabeth is crying over Veronica's body for Meliodas, but Guila says he cannot hear her. Suddenly, the goddess Amber shatters, letting Meliodas out, accompanied by a burst of dark energy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Your support is greatly appreciated.